Here on 778, this is 13.12. The question that probably you had asked yourself last session, and now we can see the answer to, is, okay, if I can create a class, can I create an array of objects of that class? You betcha. There's really just a couple of things here to note. Number one is you would still access the objects of your array by their subscript. So starting at 0 and going to n minus 1, that's how you would access the individual objects. I was going to say elements, which is incorrect, objects of your array. The other thing, and really the reason we have a separate video here for this at all, is to notice a couple of things. And the first of those is, if the constructor requires more than one argument, you must do that in a function call. And really the core of that is you must call to the constructor. So here in this example, we have inventory item. And you'll remember that inventory item was our previous example that we looked at with the overloading of the constructor. And what you'll notice here is when we are calling to inventory item, so that is the constructor for the inventory item class, and here we have inventory as an array, so we are creating an array of objects of class inventory item. You'll notice here we have a string that's a description, a double, and that is going to be the cost, and a integer that is going to be the units. So what this ends up doing is this constructor call ends up calling constructor number 3 because of the number of arguments that that constructor is expecting line up with the number of parameters it is that we are providing here at the time of the constructor call. So that's the payout, I suppose, for the overloading constructor idea in our previous video here for the course. The other thing to note is you do not always have to call the same constructor. So here in the second example we have here also on 777 is, you'll notice we have one call for just the description, so the number 2 constructor that we had, and our second call for an inventory item constructor is with the 3 parameters, the 3 arguments that we would pass over. And again, our third call here is again just for our simple 1 argument constructor. So that's all well and good, but really those are the things that you should be doing. And what I wanted to do was point you over here to this list of the idea of an initializer for those. And this is on page 779. If there's no default constructor, you must furnish an initializer for each object. So this again is the reason that it's a good idea to always provide a default constructor, because otherwise you are going to run afoul of this rule later on, and that's going to be hard just to reverse engineer, okay, why did this fail at compile time? If there are fewer initializers in a list than objects in the array, the default constructor will be called for all remaining objects. So let's say that you have an array of 12 objects and you only provide initializers for 10 of them. Numbers 10 and 11 in your array of objects, so remember that's n minus 1, is going to be called with the default constructor. So it's another good reason to always remember to provide a default constructor. So, and finally, if a constructor requires more than one argument, the initializer takes the form of a constructor function call. So in other words, here, where we have a constructor that requires 3 arguments, right? We had the string, the double, the int. You'll notice here that we are calling to those even inside of our description here, right? So we've got our inventory array, but you'll notice that we are actually calling to our inventory item constructor. Keep those 3 things in mind and reduce the amount of really maddening errors that you'll see in Replit, errors that you would see in your, production time IDE, because they are, I'm going to call them some of the less clear errors that you will see.